Hi everyone, it's Adrian Leah. I wanted to make a tag video, the only 10 mass market decks. It's a video response to Rose Honey Ritual and Garden Goddess Tarot. I have decks that I've used for a long time, over 7 years, and then there are decks that I've purchased within the last 2 years, but I feel that they read really well. So the first one is the Fairy Wicca Tarot, and I love this deck because it has aspects of the Morgan in here. There are also extra cards that are associated with Celtic and fairy lore. The deck is in Gaelic, and when I purchased it, I received the one with the larger book. I don't read many of the guidebooks, but there are some that I like to read if I feel like I connect to the reading style. And they teach me things that aren't information that other decks have normally. Hopefully you can see some of the cards in this video. I felt that this would be a fun video to do, and I love that some of the release dates for Llewellyn, or the release dates for some of the decks, fall on my birthday. So this was one of the decks that fell on my birthday, which was awesome. The next deck is the Animal Wise Tarot. I did change the backings. This is, I feel, an earlier print of the second edition. The first edition is the pink one. I have it with my other decks that I prize. I prize all of my decks. It was one that was a special one. I saw it and I loved it. So this one I love as well. This is the store copy of the Animal Wise Tarot, and I say that it's an earlier edition because the pictures on here are clearer and the card isn't see-through. When you first get it for the newer edition, I feel like the cards are darker and they're, if you put it against the light, you can see through the card. This one is a deck that I love to use. I also love the Animal Speak book that is by the person that created this deck, Ted Andrews. It's one of my favorite ways to associate the cards with animal totems and seeing how their characteristics are associated with the archetypes in the deck. I love looking at the pictures. If you get the different editions, you'll see that some of the cards, the pictures are different. And in an older video, I do a side by side. There are different names for the minor arcana. So the shapeshifters are the cups. The four-leggeds are the pentacles. The ancients are the wands, and the winged ones are the swords. So I love the way that this deck is put together. They have the Forest of Enchantment Tarot. This is one that I got it off of eBay, and it turned out to be the deck that isn't from the company that was producing it, Llewellyn. So I still love using this deck, and this deck you might not see very well because there's so much detail that's in each card. But I love working with this deck. It definitely has a whimsical and enchanted, as in the title, energy to it. The minor arcana is named differently, as well as the major arcana titles on here too. And it has a richer feeling, not too naive. It feels like a balanced deck. But you probably don't see many of the images on it, so I'll show the next deck. It's the Sacred Circles Tarot. I've had this deck for a long time. It's one of the only decks that I use that have this type of artwork where it uses real people. But I do have a strong connection with it. I feel with the black borders, it does feel a little more I would say there's there's a big contrast with it, at least for me. So it does reflect when I use the deck too. And it's also a heavy deck too. There are keywords on here, which I don't mind. I like looking at it, and sometimes it's almost as if it jump starts the reading too. Nine of Cups, stability. And I feel like this deck is readily available. It isn't too hard to find. But this deck feels straightforward. It isn't too aggressive, but it delivers solid readings. And I'm trying at different angles to see if you see some of the pictures, or at least you enjoy me talking about them at the very least. And just to say that this deck fits well in this case. Because sometimes you get deck cases and you just don't know. Even though most of the time they tell you measurements. I got this from a local metaphysical shop. And I was really happy that it fits it so well. So the next one is the Game of Thrones Tarot. I watched a little bit of the series, but I think it was a little past a time where I would delve deeply into any TV series or movie, because I do still associate a lot with things that are maybe from high school, like music or like movies and shows that I liked. And as I got older, it was more of a nostalgic feeling, or I was doing other things in my life, so I don't really keep watching any TV or movies as one of the things that I do a lot, but I did watch a little bit of it, and some of the associations to the characters are there when I read it, but for the most part, I think it's a deck that fits the type of decks that I usually go for. I like to have like the older, maybe European, specifically Celtic or medieval influenced type of decks. I love the linen cardstock of it, and the feeling of the deck is it's just nice in your hand. You shuffle it, it shuffles well. I think for a deck that's associated with a series, the symbolism and the interpretations of the cards are definitely there. So it's not one to just put random pictures on cards, although if you read them in general for any deck, I'm sure that you can pick up on something that stands out to you in your reading and go from there. But just to say that the way that the artwork is, it fits the theme and it fits the general meanings of the card well. And even with the characters that I'm familiar with are ones that suit the archetypes. And with it being as a series, there does feel like there's a bit of a story to the cards too. It weaves well when you pull out the cards and then it's telling and can definitely change chronologically, but it's a fun deck. And I do have a second copy of it that I haven't opened, but I figured that as time goes by, maybe the price of it might increase. That's one where, and that was another reason, because my rabbit did chew on the card, and so I figured I would get a backup. The next one is definitely a favorite of mine, as with all of these decks. This one is a special deck too because it's one that I was recommended by a close tarot reader friend, Jane. She is on YouTube and Instagram, My Life in Tarot. You can still find her videos. I do trust her with the recommendations because I think that she's brilliant, and she does have a deck out too. I did hear from her that the book is well written, and I am interested in it. It is written in another language, but there is a PDF that you can download to read off of if you're interested in it. It's the Theater Dolls Tarot. This is my trimmed version, and when you're reading, and I feel like clients do like to have you just constantly, read like that. And so I put the translations on the bottom where the border, or where the name of the card is written. So this would be cups, and you can see the cups and the rainbow of it. As you can see, it's taken place on a stage, and then these figures, they have different scenes or scenarios of where they're at. The way that it is, it's one that it's such a unique concept, and the interpretations are beautiful for this deck. I really feel that it's one that I constantly think of as one that, in a way, that transcends the interpretation of tarot meanings. Because there's just so much to delve into. It's the way that they're acting in here, too, even though the figures are more of a, like a mannequin type of being, and they're placed and they have masks on, but the props that they have are so well chosen, and you can see some of the cultural influence in the cards too, with the nesting dolls. Some of the faces on these cards are expressive. I'm sorry, you can't really see a lot of it. I could do another video on this deck because I highly recommend this deck. And I would say it's one of my decks that I love reading with and get some of the best readings from it, because some of it just blows your mind of how it really sets the tone and puts a different twist on it, as if it's like the Hanged Man of the decks for me. Like almost like a movie set, or like a theater set, and it's entertaining too. If I know they're figures in on the stage, but even with the Five of Pentacles, you can see the snowflakes, and still the plants that don't have a lot of leaves on them, but they're growing in, or they're falling. And then she's sitting on a jar of apples, some of it in coins, some of it that she's already eaten. And you can't really see her expression on her face, but it doesn't look like it's one where she's excited about the situation. So if you get this deck, it normally has the border all the way around. And I feel like once you take the border off, it opens up the card so much. And I'm not one to say that I don't want borders on anything. I feel like if it works with a deck, it works for the deck, or at least for me. But if it sometimes it can it's I pull away from the deck if the borders aren't working for me. So the next deck is the newer edition of the Guild Tarot, and I just felt like this deck was meant to be, because I went to, again, a local metaphysical shop, and I love going there because I love the people there, and it's just a place where I jive well with what they sell and the people. It's actually the place where I sell my deck, and so it's not the only reason why I like the place. I obviously like the place for other reasons, and then I had that happen. So with this, I went there, and I was actually going to go somewhere else that was in the area, and it was saying that this was like the display copy, so it's the discounted price. And these days, I I'm not really putting a lot into purchasing decks. Sometimes um if a deck is something that I feel connected to, then I may do it because there's one that Jane created, and I love the way that she reads, and I 100% feel that her deck will not disappoint. So that would be a self-published deck that I'd be interested in. As I go in a circle and say it, um, at the time and even right now, I'm not really getting too many decks because a lot of the decks that I have in this video are decks that I've used for a couple of years, and they work well for me. So, with all that said, I felt like it was meant to be because I was like, whoa, that's a deck that I'm gonna use, and with it being less of a ticketed price, I'm more willing to purchase it. I love the cardstock on here. I love the velvety type of cardstock that you have. This is one of the um, main Toth or Toth based decks that I use. So it's one that's special to me because it ignited something for me to um, really want to do monthly readings again. And I do love reading tarot. I read for myself and I read for clients. Um, when I first read with this deck for myself and I looked through some of the cards, I was feeling like this is a direct deck, and I wanted to feel how someone would respond to it. So I made a video, and the message was so I would consider it one that uh, people would respond well to universally, at least when I read the deck. Because when I get the messages from this deck, it's ones that are more of on the uplifting side. And I'm not one to say that every reading is going to be a positive reading, but it's always, I feel for a large audience, it's nice to have a deck that they can connect to, especially if they're not familiar with tarot. And this isn't one that's like super positive all the way around, but um, the interpretations that I was getting from the cards are ones that felt like they were healing, and that was an important aspect of the deck too, that I wanted a large audience to respond well to the deck. There are keywords, as you can see, and a lot of the numbers are larger. There's still some imagery and symbolism on the cards for the minor arcana, but I do enjoy that it delves deep into solid symbolism. And so you can really hone into into the cards. So the next deck is the Scorpio Sea Tarot. These next two were gifts. So they are I feel like it was picked out for me. Or picked out for me in a way where I do feel like I was meant to have all these decks for some purpose and reason. This is the Scorpio Sea Tarot, and I'm currently outside of DC in Northern Virginia, which is more of a business area. A lot of people are here from other areas of the US, and a lot of them work for DC or just have some type of purpose here. So the person that created this deck is in this area, and I thought that was really awesome. So the Scorpio Sea Tarot is one that I was interested in to begin with. I had the Raven's Prophecy during my last move. It was lost, so I figured that it's one of those things, and I got this deck, or was given this deck, and I feel that it really connects to me, and again, the interest of the stories that the story that it's based off of, and the cultural aspect of it too. It's more of an Irish theme, and I don't I have a little bit of Irish but there has been a strong pull to this deck. I love that the deck has knitting in it. There are a couple of knitting and spinning cards in here. And I do like decks that have minimal symbolism on the decks, but it's one that, again, it feels like you can jumpstart, and then your intuition, or however you read, kind of expands from there. This is also one of those story decks where you feel the characters, and there is a cohesiveness to this deck with it having this type of background. So it does feel like the deck goes together, and then the cards have its own interpretation of the general symbolism of the Rider-Waite-Smith, and which is another reason why I like these decks, is because the artist and the creator put the imagery that they really associate to these cards. I'm gonna say I don't really use the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck because I just like seeing different ways of how you say one thing or how you interpret a card. It's always exciting for me. And in a sense, I feel like when I look at decks, I like to see what makes them unique. And of course, all decks are unique in their own way. And it can also be like a personality thing and the things that you're interested in, how those images carry into your psyche, how they relate to you, and it could be everyday things or it could be things that really are associated with images or the imagination, your thoughts that you have throughout the day, and maybe things that make you happier. Um, a that brings something out in you that makes makes it a special experience. And at this point, that's an important those are important things that I like to see that I get out of the deck. The quality of the way that you read, almost the quality of the relationship that you have with the deck, and what you give, what it gives to you. It's almost a balance of those things. So there are two more. I do have a bit of an little bit more time. Hopefully it's not too much of a long video. But the next one is a Los Scarabeo deck. I love the size of Los Scarabeo. I love shuffling with them. The deck that I chose to have in this video is the Elven Tarot. It was also a gift. And I do love the brightness that so it's not, it's a specific type of artwork, I would say. There is another storyline to this deck, which is also fun. But at the same time, I'm not really looking into the storyline or the behind the scenes of this deck. I did read a little bit of it, but when I was reading it, it didn't give the types of readings that I was looking for. It was one where I felt like it was one where I was almost tied down to the solidifying the meanings of certain things because of what I was what I was like reading about the cards. So just to say that it's more free flowing and might be an air sign trait, might be an elven type of energy that I'm getting off of it too, as to why I like reading it a certain way. And I would say as an air sign, I feel like I like to have free-flowing thoughts, especially when I read. And sometimes it might be seen as something that's so airy, or um, some people might have a hard time pinpointing how I'm going through this thought process. But if I have this thing about myself, I don't see why it needs to be changed, but to make it as one of your strengths, and for you to see and for even others to see why it's beneficial to have that type of characteristic in yourself rather than making yourself like another person. Because I don't feel like it would work like that. Cherish the gifts and who you are. I think you're the best thing that ever happened in this world. And I feel like people can sense and really can see that part of you once you believe it. Definitely more of an authenticity type of mindset. And I feel like with elven energy too, and fairy energy, or as an associated being, I feel that the fairy and elven energy, there is a bit of a paradox to it. It is something and it isn't something. They tell you something, but then they don't tell you something. They tell you something, and then it's mixed in with some clarity and secrecy. So it's a little bit of the energy and the keenness of I guess, the Elven Tarot. So I wonder what flew out. So the last one, sorry, this is a long video, is the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. And I love using this deck. I think the interpretations are ones that I've grown to not just enjoy around this time, because I have enjoyed the deck for over the years that I've had it and that I've known it to be in this world, but I feel as if it's one of those decks that I matured with. And as I get older with the deck, it's one that the meanings are there's just so much more behind it. It's almost as if um you're in a like an adult tells you something when you're younger, and then they'll say you'll understand it when you're older. It's kind of that type of deck for me. And when you get the deck, it's just everything that it comes with, and the way that it is presented to you is really like super nice. Like I'm actually I was super like, wow, this is a really fancy one, huh? So with this deck, I did do a modification. the special thing that you'll see is that the Major Arcana is backwards. And so I put the number of, for the most part, I put the number for all the Major Arcana with the original card association, arguably. But it fits well with me, and sometimes I go off of the number that I put on there, and sometimes I go off of the number that is already on the card. This is a nice size, and the cardstock is it's thicker, and then it's everything I'm just saying. I feel like it sounds sexual, but I'm not trying to make it like that. But as I say, it's like my mature deck, and then in my head I'm like, that's what she said. But so calm and rich with meaning. The colors are soft. It's earthy, but it shows humanity in this deck too. And a lot of times how we interact in these environments. And as I'm showing these cards, I really want to do a reading from it. I have a lot of my decks in storage because I'm moving next month. So I'm in this environment, and it's not much of a surprise to anyone that has been on my channels for any time of whatever, but I tend to move frequently, and so this is why I'm in this setting too. But I guarantee you the next couple, well, it will be a definitely 100% of a guarantee that the next month I'm not going to be in this environment. So and the word that I'm getting from this deck is that this is like it's giving, the word giving. It's almost as if you see things throughout the years. Some things you wouldn't see, but it feels more crone to me, if anything. Sometimes it's even old memories and flashbacks that are kind of reminded in the cards. But it feels there's almost this strength in the calmness of this deck. And I'm almost feeling the life of nature. There's a lot of nature in this deck, but the everydayness and the lessons that these environments can teach you, which is one of my favorite things too, especially with animal decks that put the animals in their own environment, and then it lets it speak for itself of what they're doing, where they're at, how they're able to adapt or survive and thrive in these types of situations. So this was my video. Hopefully it wasn't too, it's 50 minutes, so I'm not gonna say hopefully it's not much of a long video, because it definitely is, and I think this is honestly my longest video I've ever had on any channel on here. But thank you guys so much for watching and for being part of my journey if you've seen my videos before, and for coming back since I've been off the radar. But I do like making these tags sometimes, and I would like to do more tarot videos too, to try to do a balance of the different things that I like to show and do. I'll definitely see you next time. So thank you so much. Bye.